Why does the most populous region of the country contain one of its most sparsely populated areas? 9 out of every 10 people in the Northeast live in a band that stretches from Washington, D.C. to Boston, a corridor glowing with cities, suburbs, and highways. Yet as the map moves north, the lights thin out almost suddenly. Beyond Albany and Portland, population density drops from thousands per square mile to just a handful. In northern Maine, Aroostook County averages fewer than 5 residents per square mile. The story is much the same across northern New Hampshire, Vermont, and upstate New York, where entire counties contain more trees than people. This emptiness is not a product of distance. The heart of the empty Northeast sits just 2 to 4 hours from Boston or Albany, well within a day's drive of the nation's busiest urban centers. Altogether, this northern expanse covers nearly 100,000 square miles, yet its population, less than 5 million, barely matches that of Greater Boston alone. The contrast is stark and unmistakable, raising the question, what keeps these lands so thinly settled, so close to the country's most crowded cities? High ridge lines and sprawling uplands define the northern reaches of New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. The Adirondacks alone cover 6 million acres, the largest wilderness east of the Mississippi. The green and white mountains rise sharply, with peaks like Mount Washington standing over 6,000 feet. Across this landscape, the legacy of the last ice age is everywhere. Glaciers scraped away rich topsoil, leaving behind thin, rocky tills with a pH between 4 and 5.5, too acidic for most crops. Thousands of kettle lakes and wetlands mark spots where ice blocks melted into the earth. As one University of Vermont geologist put it, glaciers did not just shape the hills and valleys, they dictated the land's fate, creating soils that resist deep roots and heavy machinery. Roads and railways struggle to cross these rugged highlands, and farming remains limited to small pockets where the land is less stony. These geologic barriers set the stage for the region's sparse settlement, making large-scale agriculture and easy travel nearly impossible. Winter arrives early and stays late in the northern reaches of Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and New York. Annual snowfall often tops 150 inches, blanketing roads and roofs for months at a time. Temperatures plunge well below zero, and the frost-free season can be as short as 90 to 120 days, a narrow window for agriculture or construction. These long, snowy winters bring constant demands. Towns spend millions of dollars each year to keep roads clear. Heating costs soar as oil and wood are burned just to keep homes livable, and basic repairs can be delayed for weeks under heavy drifts. Even the simplest routines, school commutes, grocery deliveries, emergency services become logistical challenges. Municipal budgets in these counties stretch thin, with winter maintenance consuming 2 to 3 times more funding than in milder parts of the Northeast. The climate is more than an inconvenience. It is a persistent burden that shapes every decision, pushing residents and local governments to find new ways to adapt or risk falling behind. Long before boundary lines or state charters, the northern forests and rivers of this region formed a living network for indigenous nations. The Abenaki and Haudenosaunee, often called the Iroquois, moved with the seasons, following river corridors that linked the Connecticut, Androscoggin, and St. Lawrence watersheds. Archaeological discoveries at sites like the Reagan site in Westford, Vermont, dating back 10,000 years, confirm a deep human presence in these highlands, reaching into the earliest days after the glaciers retreated. Camps along the Lamoille and Androscoggin rivers reveal tools shaped from local stone, used for hunting, fishing, and preparing food. Oral histories describe how families returned year after year to the same maple groves and fishing spots, traveling by birch bark canoe or on foot along well-worn portage trails. Trade routes stretched from the Champlain Valley up to Quebec and down to the coast, carrying furs, corn, and wampum. An indigenous scholar puts it this way: our ancestors saw the land as a web of relationships, not as empty or wild, but as home, shaped by cycles of movement and care. This approach stands in sharp contrast to later European ideas of fixed property and grid farming. Instead of permanent villages, the land was marked by seasonal rounds, sugar making in spring, fishing in summer, hunting in fall, and gathering in winter camps. The so-called emptiness of the northern Northeast is a modern illusion. For thousands of years, these uplands and valleys were alive with people, memory, and exchange, woven together by rivers and tradition. Political boundaries in the northern Northeast took shape slowly and unevenly, leaving vast areas without strong state institutions for decades. Vermont, for example, stood apart as an independent republic from 1777 to 1791. 14 years of uncertain status as its residents navigated land disputes between New York and New Hampshire. A state historian explains that without clear authority or outside investment, early Vermonters built scattered towns but few lasting roads or cities. The legacy of that independence is still visible in the region's dispersed settlements. Maine followed a different but related path. For nearly 40 years after the Revolution, it remained a distant district of Massachusetts, with Boston's priorities focused far to the south. Maine achieved statehood in 1820, prompted in part by the Missouri Compromise. Northern counties, rich in timber but lacking in infrastructure, saw little organized development until much later. The absence of early state investment meant that towns grew slowly, often isolated by forests and rivers. In northern New York, a different kind of delay took hold. By the late 1800s, conservationists pushed back against unchecked logging and land speculation. At the 1894 New York State Constitutional Convention, delegates adopted Article 14, the Forever Wild Clause. This amendment locked more than 2.5 million acres of the Adirondacks into permanent wilderness protection, forbidding sale or development. The result was a landscape where public lands remain untouched, and population density has stayed low ever since. These legal turning points, including delayed statehood, prolonged disputes, and ironclad conservation, helped lock in the region's sparse settlement, shaping not only its map, but its future. Timber, granite, and ice once drew waves of fortune seekers north, but the promise of lasting prosperity proved elusive. In the forests of Maine and the Adirondacks, logging camps and sawmills flourished for a time, feeding distant cities with lumber and pulp. Quarries in Vermont and New Hampshire shipped granite for monuments and city halls as far away as Washington and Chicago. Yet these industries depended on the land's raw bounty, not on building towns or attracting new generations. When the forests thinned or markets shifted, jobs vanished almost overnight, leaving behind scattered communities and abandoned rail spurs. Attempts to connect the region to the wider world often faltered. The St. Lawrence and Adirondack Railway, launched with high hopes in the 1890s, collapsed into bankruptcy by 1905. Promoters had promised a new era of growth, but the line never made it past the mountains, and investors lost everything. Meanwhile, the completion of the Erie Canal in 1825 opened a direct route from the Atlantic to the Midwest, drawing settlers, capital, and ambition away from the northern highlands. The rich soils and broad prairies of Ohio and Illinois beckoned, and thousands of families from Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine packed up and left. Tourism filled some gaps, but only seasonally. The economy of the empty Northeast settled into a pattern: resource extraction, brief booms, and long stretches of quiet. Without fertile farmland or reliable industry, the region never developed the dense towns and cities that define its southern neighbors. The flow of people and money turned westward, leaving the northern uplands sparsely settled and shaped by the rhythms of nature rather than the pulse of urban life. Today, the empty Northeast stretches across nearly 100,000 square miles, yet its total population remains under 5 million, barely more than the Boston metropolitan area alone. This vast region, once shaped by glacial ice and early industries, now faces a new demographic reality. The 2020 census shows a population density of just 20 to 50 people per square mile in most northern counties. In many towns, the school bus stops less often each year, and the median age quietly rises. More than 1 in 5 residents is over 62, making this one of the oldest corners of the United States. State governments have tried to reverse the trend. Vermont launched a remote worker grant offering up to $10,000 for those willing to relocate. Maine's Choose Maine program and similar efforts in New Hampshire and northern New York have followed suit, hoping to attract new families and young professionals. These incentives have brought some results. Vermont awarded over 1,200 grants and Maine nearly 900, but the long-term impact remains limited. Surveys show that about 30% of new arrivals leave within 2 years, citing the harsh winters and limited job options. A state demographer puts it simply: incentives can bring people here, but only lasting opportunities keep them. The empty Northeast is still defined by its quiet forests, aging towns, and the persistent pull of larger cities just hours away. Today, over 30,000 square miles in the northern Northeast remain more forest than city, an enduring reminder that settlement patterns are shaped by more than proximity. As climate, economy, and land use debates grow sharper, these empty spaces pose urgent questions about what we value, protect, and leave behind. Thanks for watching.